Back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us today. Our guest is Davidson County Sheriff Darren Hall. It's good to have him on. We can take your phone calls at 737-7587. Yeah, last week, pretty scary. I thought of your deputies when this happened. This actually involved a Metro police officer, which you probably know is the big story last week, who was shot in the shoulder. I think he was out trying to make an arrest on a warrant involving an individual. And again, I say the most dangerous job I think any deputy does sometimes, besides responding to a domestic call because they're so emotional, is serving a warrant, especially on a possible dangerous suspect, because you never know, and you have to show up. You're serving the warrant.
Yeah, we our staff, we serve over 200,000 warrants ourselves. Now we do orders of protection, which are obviously a very volatile part. We had an officer killed in 1995 serving an eviction notice, knocking on the door to serve the notice that you need to be removed from here. Very kind of a domestic type of situation, but a very volatile time. And we serve divorce and garnishments and all that, and primarily those are called civil warrants. The difference is most people on the other side of the door don't know the difference, and they often have both criminal and civil stuff going on, and so we're always in the middle of it. And yes, for any law enforcement, probably the most dangerous thing you're doing is when you're knocking on doors looking for someone, for several reasons. One reason is it's their comfort zone. They know the house, you don't. They're setting in wait. In our situation, ours was ambushed. They knew the situation. He was tipped off that we were coming, and I do want to mention that Jerry Newsom was shot and killed in '95. His partner that day was a man named Johnny Spears, who passed away last week, and several years later, but it was never the same. Very difficult situation for him and our staff as a whole. Just a tough day. But every time you hear about these, when I first heard this one, I knew that they were. I think the man was on parole, may have had a violation of parole even, but they were out looking to make an arrest on that. And it's just a very volatile time. You're not comfortable.
Do your deputies go out in teams serving warrants? Yeah. And when they do, are they always wearing vests? Yeah,
they're required and given a vest. Everyone, we purchase and buy the vest. They're not required to wear it at all times. There's no strictness on that, but they're required to have it with them. And they're not always in teams. There are certain types of warrants that require two, and some require one. The evictions and the orders of protections are two-man, two-women teams. But there are others, such as garnishments, where you're just knocking.
Are they able to, and do they know the offense? Just so folks know, a warrant is something that's been signed. You mean, I guess, is that basically letting you know you're wanted to be arrested, or you have to turn yourself in? They'll know what the offense is, right? So if they have a warrant, what's the worst or most scary warrant to serve? Probably.
You could have murder warrants.
Okay, murder warrants, right?
No, we wouldn't serve that, but
that's hard, because usually that guy's hiding out somewhere. And sometimes you're serving warrants for someone's deadbeat parent, and they go serve them that, and they're just sitting on the couch.
Yeah, but and we serve. Here's the one that you mentioned. It's the order of protection. It's a domestic squabble where I think it's my house. She thinks it's her house. We're arguing, fighting. She's gone and taken orders. She's fearful of me, so we're pulling up on the scene, making me leave the house in which he believes is his. They're at odds. We're the mediator, basically, because there's an order of protection to remove you from the home. Those are very volatile daily situations going on, and anytime you hear it, it's a domestic situation gone bad. I think I heard of an officer shot over the weekend in another state.
Oh, there's another one just overnight in Georgia. I mean, these officers being shot. That was 7 in the past month in Georgia.
In Georgia, I mean, that's usually it's warrant oriented. Typically, sometimes stops, but it's warrant oriented, and you're out there looking for someone. That person knows you're looking for them. They don't want to go oftentimes, and even in a domestic situation, as you know, the emotions are running so high that you're out there and you're the enforcement of that, and the individual feels like that they have their own turf, and it's a very tough, difficult situation, and our staff, as you can imagine, the volume of that is increased dramatically over the last. I mean, we're serving over 3,000 a year, I know, in just orders of protection alone, and it's a very, very high volume time, and
holidays too, with the domestics, the drinking, the depression that comes with it. Let's take a call from Katie. Katie, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Katie. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question. How would you said they don't serve warrants or pick warrants for murder. who does that?
Yeah, and maybe I wasn't very clear. Because that's a criminal charge in which he or she has been charged with a crime, the police have a warrant division as well that would go out and serve that level of a warrant. We may be involved with a person who has such a charge, but we're serving the order protections or evictions or all sorts of things that go on with that case. But if it's an armed robbery or a robbery, that would be Metro Police doing it. We would do all the civil work, i.e. the other warrants that are oftentimes coexist. I think I looked at this one time. I think 30% of the people who we're looking for, the police are looking for too. That's an interesting number.
That's 30% overlap. Huh?
Right.
Does that answer anything else, Katie?
I guess so. It's more the city police that does that?
Yes.
I guess, Sam?
Yeah, and Katie, I probably wasn't fair. And again, in Nashville, we don't really have a city-county. We have the whole county is done by the police.
Right.
But where I use the word warrant that may throw you off is like in an order of protection. That's a civil case, but it's where we're telling you must leave, and then if you violate that civil case, the police would arrest you. It's kind of a strange overlap. But yeah, we're serving warrants, but they're civil in nature. The police serve warrants that are criminal in nature, and we're both out in the field doing that all day long.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you. I was just wondering.
Sure.
Right,
Appreciate
you.
your call. It's a good question. It can get confusing.
It is.
Warrants and difference between civil and criminal. But boy, it's amazing how many you said you guys serve. That's just a ton.
It's increased dramatically over the last. I haven't looked in the last few months, but just the increase. And we internally for years and years have been saying this, but really O.J. Simpson's case brought domestic abuse to the national conversation. It really did. And think about how long ago that was. And since that time, there's just been a lot of things that have increased. We have a thing here in the county called the Gene Crow Advocacy Center, which is really for domestic victims. And so it's in the courthouse. It's a really neat program where victims can go and basically be walked through the system with an advocate and explain how the process works to keep you away from the perpetrator in your case. And you just think about, the Metro Police Department years ago started a domestic violence unit. A whole unit dedicated just to domestic.
Sure.
We have a huge increase in domestic work that we do, and you just look at what all is going on in the last 25 years really with domestic abuse and domestic issues. We have a treatment program inside the jail. We deal with the batterers, the males that are active in domestic abuse. It's just probably one of those segments of the criminal justice system that is, and I believe the O.J. case is what drove all that. Really,
it's good that it raised awareness for sure, because that stuff has always been going on.
Right.
It's always been going on. And, real quick, I wanted to hit on, because we've got several things I want to touch bases on. But all right, I don't know if it has to do with warrants or what, but there's bogus calls being made on behalf of you and some of your deputies, and it's happened in other counties too. I've heard several other counties put out alerts that if you get a call saying it's the sheriff's department, don't buy it. Yeah,
please. Thank you for doing that. I got one this morning, by the way. A person called me. I have people at my office that will show up and say, here, you're called and wanting us to. My mother was called in another county. I promise you this is a regular occurrence. And here's what they're doing. They call and they say, are you Nick Barris? Yes. Well, this is Captain Anderson or Lieutenant Anderson from the sheriff's office, and you failed to appear, or you were subpoenaed for jury duty, and there's a $1,500 fine levied against you, and I want you to go down to this, and I don't even know how this actually works, go down and purchase these certain kind of cards. You put the money on the card, the sheriff's office will be involved. You need to drop that off with us and upload this money. It's this big Now, what you need to know is I've actually had one of these recorded and sent to me. In the background, you'll hear radio traffic. Hang on, car 48. It sounds so authentic.
So they've gone to that point where they probably have some machine playing nat sound behind them to make it sound real. And they're probably just sitting in some warehouse, probably overseas in India or something, you know, because usually it's really hard to track these folks down.
But here's the thing to know, and by the way, it is a regular, very aggressive campaign, and here's what you know. The sheriff's office would never, no sheriff's office would ever have you put money on anything and then submit that to anybody. Don't ever do that for any purpose. The only thing you may ever owe would be court costs and fines and so forth, and that's to be done directly at the courthouse in person. Don't ever load that. Don't ever give it to anybody. I would ask that if you get that call, do your best to record the number, see what the caller ID is, and then call the sheriff's office. Let us know know that you had one of these. We're working with the police department trying to come up with kind of a profile of some of this. For a while we thought it was seniors, but now we've seen other folks, and that they were targeting based on age and so forth. But it's a very aggressive, it's a pretty sophisticated program they've got, and there are a lot of people. I've had people tell me they loaded $2,000 on a card and sent it.
I know. You wonder if people, and here's the bottom line, it keeps happening because it's working.
It's working.
And that's what just bothers me so much. And I mean, obviously, it's people like you and I, because we've done these stories and we see it, I would in a million years never fall for that. But you put yourself in someone else's situation, especially a senior. I think of my folks sometimes who have gotten a few of these calls and have checked with me, and I say, Mom, Dad, don't do it. You're elderly, you're at home,
right.
You don't get out as much. There's someone with an official sounding thing. They even use your name.
Right.
Oh, well, it must be Darren Hall. And then they hear police traffic in the back. They believe it, and then all of a sudden they're afraid if they don't, there's going to be someone showing up at their door to arrest them. And it's not just you guys. The IRS, there's bogus calls from the IRS. There's other agencies as well, police departments, bogus. All I say is in this day and age, and you probably believe this, I will just go on to the record. I don't care. Anyone call on the phone asking you for money under any circumstance, okay? Even if it's your kid, frankly.
Yeah.
You know what? Hang up on them.
I need to say
Do
no to
not
mine.
give any. And what I mean is someone maybe misrepresenting themselves as your child. But I mean, just don't believe it.
Right.
There was someone who called my dad and almost bamboozled him into saying, yes, I'm calling from Mexico. Your grandson is down here and was in an accident. He was on a vacation and he needs some money to get to the hospital. Can you? And my son is 16 years old, but my dad, because all of a sudden he's older, he's beginning to slip a bit, and he's in his mid-80s, and he's like, oh no, Huey, is he okay? Now the good news is my dad, who fell for it, you know, kind of, well, okay, he hung up and they called me. And I'm like, no, Dad, Huey's 16. Yeah. He's not in Mexico under any circumstances. And he was very embarrassed afterwards. I felt bad. Thank goodness they were asking for money, but he bought it. And my dad's an intelligent, good guy. He's not completely lost his marbles. And yet they're so smooth with an elderly couple, and immediately he's worried about his grandson instead of thinking about the logic of the call.
Sure. I'll
it's
tell
the
you,
psychology there.
I'm not going to say who it is, but I'll tell you, there are two extremely prominent attorneys in town. I respect immensely, very smart people, great lawyers.
Yeah.
I promise you, in the last 6 months, both two separate calls, but the same scam, and they were concerned. They were called, their wife or themselves. And the point was, it sounds well. I mean, for example, I had someone send me, they recorded it and sent it to me 2 weeks ago. And when you listen to it, I mean, it's hard not to. They ask them, well, who is the sheriff in Nashville? And they name it. Who is the captain? Who is it? They've got it all down. And
they knew my son's name. They knew my folks were older. So, you know, these days you can Google and you can figure it out on a biography. So all of a sudden, my dad's thinking, well, how does he know my son's name and age and all that? Anyway, and I've said this before as we go to the break, under any circumstance, just hang up on it. If the calls keep coming, go to the convenience store and buy yourself an air horn, okay? One of those air horns. And next time you get one of those calls from someone asking for money or claiming they're with the Sheriff's Department, say, well, hold on, let me get my checkbook, and then take it and put it right up to the mouthpiece and crank it. So the guy's holding it like this and it blasts his eardrum. That's what I do. In fact, I've done that, and I get a kick out of it. Then I just hang up. Have fun with your headache, buddy. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, more of your calls right after this.